All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming together online. The district has been trying to make some of the contest training or some of the training in general a little easier. So we decided to do a series of webinars this time around for contest training. And this is definitely a pilot program. So again, I'll mention we would like to get your feedback afterwards. So please do take a minute or two to give us some comments on your webinar experience after. But we are really excited to have the webinars. This is the last of this series. Um, I know I can hear Jeff chuckling in the background. So, but we're winding down our awesome webinar Grand Slam series with a session on how to judge at a contest. I'd like to talk a little bit about our presenter tonight. That's the Honorable Jeff Brown from San Antonio. He is a self-proclaimed retired brain dead survivor of the Silicon Valley pressure cooker, having managed international teams of esoteric and egocentric engineers for 20 years, as well as serving in the U.S. Navy. So it sounds like Jeff's great at herding cats and keeping things on track and in ship shape. He's been with Toastmasters. He's been in Toastmasters for about 2 years. He took second place at last fall's division level humorous speech contest, which happened to be his first competition. So he advanced 3 levels the first time. He was also deeply involved in this year's spring contest, performing a wide variety of roles, including judging. Jeff's a member of 2 clubs in San Antonio, the Business and Professional Toastmasters Club, as well as the Chase Toastmasters ROC. Jeff is also, if that's not enough, we're going to pile it on. Jeff is considered an Easy Speak Junior guru. And if you're not familiar with Easy Speak, this is something you might want to check out. It's an awesome club management software program. And maybe at the next TLI or training, we can present a session so folks get more comfortable with it, but it's something to check out. He is also an ambassador for the upcoming revitalized educational program that Toastmasters as an organization will be introducing, I believe, in about a year. Jeff's a speechaholic and is one entertaining speech away from his ACS award. So, Jeff, I did the same intro for you on Monday. You haven't given this speech in the meantime, have you? No, you haven't earned
No.
your ACS this week. No, all right.
Technically, no.
No. Okay. So Jeff's still on his way to the ACS. So please help me warmly welcome Jeff Brown, ACBALB, and you can warmly welcome on your chat message as he presents tonight's webinar on contest judges. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Gene, for that wonderful introduction. I have no idea where you got all those lies and everything, but that's okay. Appreciate the kind word. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I recognize that this is 7 o'clock on a Thursday night. There's a really nice presentation you're going to see here on the webinar, and I know everybody votes with their time, and it's very, very important to me and to the district that as many people as possible can see this webinar and understand contest judging and what we're going to be doing on a go-forward basis and explaining how it all works. So, moving right along, why would any of us want to be a contest judge to start with? Let's start with that basic question, shall we? When we look at contest judging, it actively supports Toastmasters. Now, it's important to understand that contests are not an easy thing to put together. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a whole lot of people that do a whole lot of work. And there's 2 people in particular, the chief judge and the contest chair, that have to pull it all together. So when we are a contest judge, we are actively supporting Toastmasters as an organization. And contests are huge within Toastmasters. But hey, it's fun to be a contest judge. It is absolutely fun. You get to sit there and you get a wonderful view. You get an opportunity to truly dig in and understand the speakers that are there. It truly is a whole lot of fun. You also get a chance to hone your listening and your objectivity and your analytical skills. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we have to, as judges, we have to objectively listen to what the speakers are saying and analyze and compare that to a set of criteria that Toastmasters has put together and assembled over the decades that they've been doing it. But frankly, the most important reason of all for being a contest judge, as far as I'm concerned, it guarantees you a great seat at the contest. You know, these contests, particularly in Division I, are really starting to pack houses. We're getting a standing room only, and if you want a good seat, I guarantee you, become a contest judge and you will guarantee a great seat. So, who can be a contest judge? Can I be one, Jeff? I mean, I've only been with Toastmasters for a little time period. And the answer is yes. If you are in a club level contest, the only requirement is that you be a member in good standing. Now, you cannot be competing in a higher level contest. And this, of course, prevents the possibility that a judge may stack the deck in his favor if he were to go on into higher level contests. But realistically, if you're new to Toastmasters and you want to get involved and you really want to understand what it is to be a contest judge, dive right in. At the club level, you can do that. Now, as we move up into the area, division, and the district levels, the competition becomes a little steeper. And as such, Toastmasters demands that the contest judges have a little bit more experience under their belt. So we must be members at least within 6 months. And we have to have completed at least 6 competent communicator manual speeches. This gives a very good foundation for the judges at the area and above contests so that they can look very objectively at the different speakers. Again, you can't be competing in a higher level above. Now, for this, the purpose of this presentation, I'm only going to be talking about up to the district level. But when you go beyond into the International Speech Contest, the requirements to be a judge obviously go up and become much higher. You need a higher level of communication skills and awards to get to that point. But one of the things that we must always keep in mind is we must be discreet. Discretion is the key point for all voting judges. And to the best of our ability, we want all voting judges to be anonymous. Now, that can be sort of difficult when you're in the thick of the contest. But before the contest and definitely after, we want to remain as anonymous as possible in order to continue and make sure that we give it the best possible that there is.
Hey,
Judges
Jeff.
have an Yes, ma'am.
I am so sorry. So, Adrian, who's on the line, said that we should probably clarify what it means to be a member in good standing to anybody that might be new. And that just means that, go ahead.
No, that's an excellent question. A member in good standing would be somebody that is a member of a club, has their dues paid, doesn't have any, I doubt that it would ever occur, but have any disciplinary issues or anything against them. They certainly wouldn't want their faces on wooden posters or anything around town. So a member in good standing really requires somebody to have their dues paid and to be an active member in a club.
Perfect, thanks.
Excellent. So, judges, what are our obligations? Well, we do have some, and the number one obligation we have is to the contestants themselves. Remember, the contestants have put a lot of time and effort into being, to get to where they're at. In many cases, they've gone through the club level contests, they've gone through the area. When they start to get up to the division and the district level contests, they've put a lot of time and effort into their speeches. And it's important that we as judges maintain and hold in our minds that these guys have worked hard to get to that point. So we do have an obligation directly to the contestants themselves. We also have it to Toastmasters International. Toastmasters International puts a whole lot of emphasis and credibility on the contest program as a whole. So when we have contests, we want to make sure that those contests are really kept well above board and that everything is taken care of in a very, very professional manner. We owe it to the audience. The audience is giving their time. They're coming to support their own clubs or to see the speakers in action. So when we are judges, we want to make sure that we're giving it all for the audience as well. But again, more importantly, we want to make sure that judges, we have an obligation to ourselves. We have a moral side to judging that we want to always uphold and make sure that we keep true. So obligation is a huge thing as far as the judges is concerned. So what is the purpose of a voting judge? Well, it's a lot simpler than one might think. Each judge selects the speaker who they believe has given the best speech at a particular contest. Now that's kind of a long-winded way of putting it, because in essence, in simple terms, we simply select the contest winner. Nothing more, nothing less. We just select the winner. And as such, it's very important to remember that judges do not evaluate. We don't provide feedback to the contestants. As a matter of fact, as you're going to see later on, silence is the best of all things for a judge. We don't provide any feedback whatsoever. We simply compare a group of speeches and rank them in an order based upon some very objective criteria. And we're going to go over that objective criteria in just a few moments. Judges' decisions are confidential. You don't have to share them with anybody. As a matter of fact, frankly, I wouldn't share them with anybody. Your decisions as a judge stay with you. Your ballot, when you supply it and you give it to the ballot counters, will only list the winners. It does not list all of the criteria that goes into your judging. We do not explain our decision. We don't have to. And finally, we must remember that if we have any deviation from this thinking whatsoever, the judge is distracted from his true purpose. And remember, the true purpose is simply to select the winner, not to evaluate anything. And that is an important key point that I want to make sure everybody understands. So as we move forward, what are some of the characteristics of an extraordinary contest judge? Well, first we need to be accurate. When we fill out our ballot, we're going to be presenting it and giving it to people in a completely different room. There's no chance for that ballot to come back to us to ask for clarifications. So we must make sure that that ballot is filled out completely and accurately. We also need to make sure that we're fair. Remember, these contestants have all worked hard to get to this particular point, and they're looking to the judges to provide a very fair assessment of who is the best speech of the night. We must be trustworthy. And trustworthy stems to the fact that we, Toastmasters, and our clubs, our audience, and our contestants, and ourselves, we want to make sure that we do not in any way tarnish the whole contest arena and how that all goes together. We have to be knowledgeable. We must be able to analyze a speech, listen carefully. We use those skills that we learn week after week within our Toastmasters meeting. And we have to be good listeners. And this, I think, is one of the key points. This is one of the key takeaways that I get out of contest judging. It always makes me a far better listener. And we have to be neutral and very objective. This can sometimes be tough, not so much the neutral part, but the objectivity. Because in order to be a judge, we have to be neutral and very objective. Well, what are some of the barriers to the objectivity part? Well, one of them is speaker position. And what speaker position is when a group of speakers are standing up in the stadium area and they're speaking and going through their speeches, the last one that we hear is the one that sticks the most in our minds. It's that short-term memory of our brain. Now, the way we compensate for this a little bit is that after each speech, there's a moment of silence, 1 minute to be exact. That gives the judges an opportunity to judge on the spot so that the speaker that just spoke is the one that is the last in their mind. Champion for the underdog. Hey, everyone loves an underdog, right? We look at the underdog and we say, that guy tries really hard. You know, that gal gave it her all because this is her first speech. And we may have a tendency to, say, overcompensate for that. We must remember that that's not what we want to do. We look at each speech individually, regardless of whether this is their first time speaking or whether they've been doing it for 20 years. We cannot look at an individual and give them extra credit because this is their first time. The halo effect. This one really speaks to the fact where you have a speaker that has one absolutely outstanding quality. You look at the objectives and you look at the criteria and you go, wow, she just batted this one out of the park. And so she must be good in all of the other areas. That's the halo effect. What we need to do is make sure that we look at each criteria individually and independent from each one of the other ones. We also have the reverse halo effect. And this one is where we have one bad habit, where perhaps we look and say, wow, you know, he just didn't go through those motions correctly. He could have used far, far better body language. Maybe the rest of his speech isn't quite right. And again, that's the wrong way to look at it. If his body language is not good, then you focus on that independently of everything else. Second time around, this is where we look at a speaker and we say, I just saw you speak a couple weeks ago. You did really well at that last contest. You're going to do really well this time. Nope. We do not care what the speaker has done previously. We're looking at one speech contest, one speech delivery, and we must remove from our mind, as difficult as it is, we must remove from our mind all of those biases from where we have seen that speaker go through his motions before. Not the norm. Now this is probably more prevalent at the club level, perhaps even at the area level to a certain degree, but some areas and clubs you may have a situation where it's traditional that the speaker provides his delivery behind the lectern. Now that's not a requirement at all, but perhaps it's a little bit of the legend and folklore kind of stuff for a particular club. And if another speaker comes in and doesn't use the lectern, do we discount that? Do we look at that second speaker and say, you didn't do what we normally do? And again, we must discount that. We look at each objective completely independent of all the others. And last, prejudices and personal preferences. And the easy way that I tell everybody on this one is, if you're a judge, when you enter the room for a speech contest, you check your ego, your prejudices, and your personal preferences at the door. You must be completely 100% objective. And that's really the key to remember. We look at the criteria, we look at each speech independently, one at a time. Are there legends and folklores, Jeff? What are some of the misconceptions? Oh yeah, there's all kinds of them. There's all kinds of stories and rumors and things that morph into what we call common knowledge and unwritten rules. Some of the ones that come out to mind, one recently, for example, that came to mind is that there's a rumor out there, or a legend or common knowledge, that in order to be in the humorous speech contest, you have to do 6 competent communicator manual speeches. Truth is, there's only one contest that requires that, and that's the international competition. Another example is, we have one here where international speech contests must be of a serious, motivational, or inspirational manner. Absolutely not. This is urban legend. The rule book is explicit. The speaker may use any material he wishes for any contest, as long as it's original and his own creation. There's another one that says props and visuals must be restricted simply because of safety or good taste. And again, this one is false. If we go back to the contests of last fall, or last year at the district conference, during the evaluation sequence, the test speaker did an outstanding job delivering a test speech with a hat stand and 3 hats. Beautifully done. There's nothing in the rule book that says you can't use props. And in last fall's contests, I gave a speech and went very high up simply by using a number of props. And during the test sequences and test speeches this year, I used a wide variety of audiovisual and physical props, it went exceptionally well. The rule book doesn't give any. The rule book is your main definitive word. And this is really the crux that I want you to take away from this particular slide and the next one. The rule book is available, by the way, as item 1171 from Toastmasters.org. It's a free PDF, so there's no reason why we as judges shouldn't get this as quickly as possible. This year alone, there's 19 modifications to it, changes that were done, because the rule book is updated on an annual basis. And there's a whole committee at the TMI level that looks over the rule book every year, takes in feedback, and makes modifications. So if you have a rule book from 2013 or 2012, frankly, I would ceremoniously bury it and salute it and move on to the 2014, because that is the definitive guide for all contests in this particular contest year. Well, Jeff, I'm all set to go. You know, you've told me why I should do this. You've given me some good thoughts on how I can be objective and go through those motions really well. How do I sign up? It's really so simple, it's silly. All you need to do is to contact the chief judge or the contest chair. That's it. Just go up to them and say, hey, I want to volunteer to be a judge. And I guarantee you they will fawn all over you for the next month, because getting contest judges to come in, particularly people that want to do it, is a fabulous thing. Volunteerism within Toastmasters is wonderful. And I guarantee you, if you go up and say, I want to be a judge, they're going to say yes. So, you're now a contest judge. What should you do as you prepare for your contest? Well, the first thing you should do is review and become familiar with a number of documents. And the first one is the judge's certification and eligibility and code of ethics. This document is fairly straightforward, and I'm going to show it to you here really fast as soon as I can find it. I had it. Oh, here it is. This document is one that you should know before you walk into the speech area. Now, you don't have to fill it out before the speech time period. As a matter of fact, I prefer to review it ahead of time and submit it right in front of the chief judge. I don't know, for some reason it just seems a little bit easier for me. This can be found also. This is item number 1170 on Toastmaster.org. You can download it. It's a single page. Essentially, it asks you what's the type of contest, what's the contest level, and what is the date. Again, it goes over the eligibility for the contests, and it gives the code of ethics for the judges. You can review this at your own leisure. Sign it, print your name, and you're good to go. This particular document is something that's important that you look over, understand, and be ready to present this in front of the chief judge. The next one you should go over is the rule book. And we talked about the rule book a few moments ago, and it's only 24 pages. Two of those are cover pages. There's a title page and a table of contents. So you're talking only about 20 pages. It's a small pamphlet. But it's something that should be reviewed and gone over. And inside the rule book, it's broken up into the speech contest types. So reading the whole book will tell you certainly everything there is to know about contests, but there's certain sections that are more applicable than others. You should also look over the ballots. And this becomes very, very important, because when you look over the ballot, it gives you a chance to understand the criteria well ahead of time. For example, if we look at a ballot, if we look at the humorous speech ballot, for example, we have a number of sections to it. There's a top section that has the criteria. Then there is, for this particular one, which is the tiebreaker judge, there's a section at the bottom. But the big one on the back is the judging criteria. This is the area that I think is so important, because we learn so much about how we should be looking at the different speakers. There's the speech content and the different aspects, the speech delivery, the language that the individual uses, and again, the code of ethics. And again, we're going to be going over going over these in just a moment. We want to arrive, the most important thing to keep in mind is we want to arrive at least 30 minutes ahead of time. And the reason for this is simple. The chief judge, as well as the contest chair, will hold a meeting where they will bring together their respective teams to go over any last-minute details. They're going to go over the paperwork and make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. They really want to make sure that everything is covered and taken care of in a manner that makes sense for the contest. So whatever you do, if you're going to be a judge, please make sure you arrive at least 30 minutes ahead of time so that you can be a part of that. Contest judges. Each type of contest has a different ballot form, and one ballot is used for each contest participant. So if we go back for a moment, and I apologize for moving between the different forms. As I get there, as I get the one that I need. You know, best laid plans of mice and men. We sit here and we work through this. This is the one I want. Here we go. This is the one for the humorous speech contest. And as you can see here, there's 10 slots for your individuals that go across the top. The best way to fill these out is to go ahead and work your names across the top, and then you're going to use each column for a particular speaker. At the bottom, this is your ballot form itself. The ballot is where you will submit to the individual counters for them to tally up. And again, on the back side is the judging criteria. So for this particular aspect, keep in mind that there's two sections, two individual areas that we must keep in mind on the ballot itself. So we have a top portion and we have a bottom portion. The judging criteria, as I mentioned, and the code of ethics are on the back page for the ballot. Now I talked about a tie-breaking ballot, and when we look at the tie-breaking ballot, again, we want to take a look at this bottom section, because on this bottom section, the tiebreaker is only known to the judge, the chief judge. The tiebreaker's role is really to break a place tie that the ballot counters have counted up. And this is the official ballot, so it's slightly different. Now, the criteria that's used for judging for the tie-breaking judge is identical to the regular ballot that a voting judge uses. But on the tiebreaker, they'll have a slightly different one that they'll have to use. The tie-breaking judge is known exclusively to the chief judge. This is an important aspect to keep in mind because the tie-breaking judge is only needed in the case of a place tie. And this is a concept that we must try and always keep in mind. The voting judges, the main five for the lower-end contests, the main five judges, those are the ones that are counted. The only time that the tie-breaking judge comes into play is when there is a tie that the ballot counters count up. For example, the ballots come in and it ends up that there are two first-place winners. In this particular case, the chief judge would take the tie-breaking ballot, give it to the ballot counters, and the tie-breaking ballot is taken into account to break that first-place tie. Because at the end of the contest, there's only 3 winners for 3 places, first, second, and third. So we must always keep that in mind, that the tie-breaking judge, while only known to the chief judge, is one that truly, truly is secret. And as I mentioned, the chief judge will hold that ballot and reveals it only if it's needed. In fact, if there are 3 clean places, one first, one second, one third place, the chief judge should destroy the ballot from the tie-breaking judge himself. So how do we use the ballot? How do we actually fill this thing out? The way to do this is to, and I'm going to go ahead and go through this using the ballot itself. I'm going to use the humor speech contest. Now, the easiest way that I found to fill this out is as the first speaker is given, put the first speaker's name here on the right-hand column. Well, Jeff, why would you use the right-hand column? Remember, one of the things we want to do as judges is we want to be as anonymous and as discreet as possible. And frankly, when you're sitting at the table, there's going to be 15 pairs of beady eyes staring at you to see what you're going to be writing. So you have to try and be as discreet as possible. When you fill out this column right here with the individual's name, at the end of the speech, and you start filling in the individual criteria, and the way we do that is, let's look at speech development. The structure and the organization, the support material. Wow, Pete did a really good job. He did a very good job. Was he closer to excellent or closer to good? If he was closer to excellent, you'd give him a 14, and you'd put 14 over here in the 10. If he was closer to a good, then you would put a 12 or a 13 if you felt that he was really solid in the very good. Effectiveness. How well did he achieve the purpose and the interest, the reception of his particular speech? Again, goes from 0 to 10. Well, he did a good job at that. Again, was it closer to very good or closer to fair? You continue down the column, filling in the different numbers. When you get the column filled in, you simply tally up the entire column, total it up. Now this is why you start on the right-hand column. Once you've finished, fold the ballot right here so that you take the number 10 and you fold it under the page. That way when the second speaker talks, number 9 is now the exposed right-hand column, and people around you cannot see how you voted while you're paying attention to the second speaker. You fill in that column, and then you fold it again along here, and fold it under the page, and you move actually backwards. Now, after each speech, you will be given 1 minute of silence so that you can focus on that speaker. And this is where you have an opportunity to fill in the column truly objectively, thinking only of that one speaker. The other advantage that I see to folding this under is once you fold it under, you as the judge can't go back and look at it to make a comparison. You truly are making an objective judgment with a blank sheet of paper each time. So remember to try and fold those under as you can. When all the speakers are done, the Toastmaster will ask for silence until all the ballots are raised. At this time, you take and you look at this bottom row here, and you look at all of the total numbers at the bottom. The one with the highest number is your first place winner. Second highest is your second place winner, and third highest is your third place winner. Now this is very important because you may come up with a place that has 2. Let's say, for example, Mary is the first place winner with 85 points. The second place winner is a tie with Pete and Jim with 80 points each. Well, what do? You must make a decision. You, the judge, at that point must break the second place tie. You can only have one name in first, one name in second, and one in third. So in this particular place, Mary is the first place winner. You make a decision. Is it Pete or Jim? And then down here, it is Pete or Jim, whichever one was not the second place winner. Sign the ballot. If you do not sign the ballot, it will be discarded. It is very important. A very wise, sage chief judge way back when told me that the very first thing you should do with your ballot, Jeff, is to sign it, so that you absolutely don't forget to do it in the heat of the moment. Because, let's face it, there's a whole lot of dead silence at the end of all of the balloting. And you want that silence to end. It's a natural human emotion. And so you may forget to sign the ballot in error. So sign it up front, and that way you fill in the names, you're signed, you've got your name printed. At this point, right along here, along the dotted line, cut it, tear it, and you only submit this bottom portion to the ballot counters. Most contests will have envelopes provided for you to put it in. Otherwise, you can fold it in half and simply raise it for the ballot counter to bring forward. That is what it is to fill out the ballot, to go through the motions of making sure that the ballot is filled out well. So that when we go back, we want to make sure that we use objectivity and not evaluation techniques. Remember, you've got that objective criteria to look at. You don't need to make an evaluation. You don't need to tell the speaker what they could do better or what they didn't do quite well. So don't worry about that aspect. Again, we have the 1 minute of silence after the completion of each speaker for you to be able to fill out that time period. And of course, we repeat the process all the way through until we get to the very end. Finalizing the ballot, again, we total each column, which represents each contest participant. The highest column becomes first, second, third place, etc. No ties, none whatsoever. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's 2 columns that have the exact same total, you as the contest judge must make a decision as to who are the different places. 3 places, 3 names, no exceptions. And we must make sure that the ballot is signed. When we get that finished, is the ballot complete? We must make sure it is complete, because once we hand that ballot to the tallies, you will never be able to get it back. It is a one-way trip. So we must make sure that everything is done. 3 different contestants for first, second, third place. The judge has signed the ballot. And again, this is where we get back to the accurate part. If the ballot is not complete, or if it's unreadable in any way, if you've scribbled some name on there, the chief judge will discard the ballot. There can be no ambiguity. It must be clean. It must be crisp. And finally, we tear off the bottom of the portion and hand it to the ballot counters. Now, in this contest season, there will be 2 contests given, humorous speech and table topics. So we just went through how we would do it for the humorous speech. We do it identically for the table topics. The only difference is the ballot is different. We go ahead and use a ballot that's specific for table topics. Once the entire contest is over, what is some of the post-contest etiquette that we should have? Well, we must remember that judges should remain anonymous at all times. Now, that's pretty tough to do when you're in a silent room and everybody's staring around and they see these arms being held up with pieces of paper in their hand. It kind of makes it tough to remain anonymous. But we as judges should try to the best of our ability to remain anonymous, at least in our minds. And that requires us to never discuss our voting, judging, or the ranking of contestants with anybody. We don't want to discuss it at all. We want to just forget it to the best of our ability. Because again, we must be trustworthy. This gets back to some of those first aspects that we talked about. Discretion and humility are the key attributes of any outstanding judge. If you keep those 2 things in mind, you'll do exceptionally well. Discretion and humility. We don't want again, we check our egos at the door when we come in, and we want to be very, very discreet. And the best way I can put it is, the best judge is the judge not known. The best judge is the judge not known. Here are some of the resources that I've used and that you will use during this contest season. And this is, as you can see, part of the presentation which you'll all be receiving. There'll be get that rule book, item number 1171, the certification of eligibility and code of ethics, all of the different ballots that are also available. All of these are free through Toastmasters.org, and I encourage everyone to snag these, log on and snag them at your convenience, review them, look them over before you enter the speech area. It's so important to have it all in your mind so that there's no questions, no issues, and the chief judge can move through the proceedings exceptionally well. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being a part of this presentation. I know that you've given your time this evening in order to listen to me talk, ramble on for a while, and I'll open the chat for any questions that come about. Gene.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm chatting and speaking simultaneously. So great job. I enjoyed the presentation very much and wanted to let everyone on the line know that if you have any questions at this time, that we can take them on the chat. Who was it? Adrian Huddleston earlier asked a very funny question, and I wasn't sure. Adrian, I might unmute you just for a minute for a point of clarification, but Adrian's question was, how do you know if a speaker is an underdog if they are the very first speaker? So I guess in a sense, like, it's just kind of a funny, like an order thing. Adrian, I think I unmuted you.
Yeah.
Yep.
The point of the underdog is that you may know of somebody who's speaking for the very first time in a contest. And if you don't know, that's all the better. If you don't know that this person is speaking for the first time, that is the ideal mindset. But you may know, for example, because you happen to be visiting another club when they were doing their contests and you saw somebody, and through the conversation of the club you found out that this is the individual's first contest. You would know in the back of your mind that that was happening. That's the only reason that we talk about that. If the judge doesn't know, that is the ideal situation.
That's very true. So,
okay,
hey,
so my thing was that, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What I was talking about is if they are the first speaker and you don't know any of the other speakers, how can you assume that they are the underdog?
Oh, you don't.
If you're judging them for their presentation only, how can you assume that they're an underdog?
Oh, you don't. You don't know. I'm not saying that you should assume it. Quite the contrary. You want to look at each speaker as they're speaking individually. The only way that you would know if an individual is speaking for the first time is if prior to the contest you're judging, you find out that Mary Smith just happens to be speaking for the very first time in a contest. That would be the only way. There's no other way. There's no introductions, because when the speakers are introduced, they're introduced by name, their title, and name. That's it. And you don't know. And so if you don't know, all the better. Did I answer your question, Adrian?
I suppose it's still a little unclear as to how you can determine somebody is an underdog if you haven't heard everyone else speak. So that's my
concern. You don't. Now hearing it, you put it in a slightly different context. You don't want to know. You don't want to know. In a perfect world, you do not want to know. But there is the possibility, Adrian. Let's say you're judging a contest, and you see the name list of speakers, and you go, "Oh, Mary Smith is on the list. I know that this is the first time she's giving a contest speech." You may know that, just you. But the judges as a whole, we don't want the judges to even know that the individual is a first-time speaker. It's the only reason I even bring that up as talking about the underdog is that we as judges, as a single judge, as an individual judge, may know from prior knowledge that a particular speaker is in a contest for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a different way of putting it for you.
Yeah, but we're also supposed to remain objective as well.
Absolutely, beyond a question. You must,
Okay.
even if you know the person is speaking in a contest for the first time, you must look at everything absolutely objectively.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so Jeff, I have a curveball for you.
Sure.
And I've been in this situation before as a contest judge where you know one of the contestants fairly well. Maybe you've heard them speak before, maybe they're in a club within your area, but it's somebody you're pretty familiar with. Um, what do you think are good tips to sort of make sure that you're not, I guess, biased, right?
Sure. I understand the question. In a perfect world, Gene, the judge would disqualify themselves and say, I can't do this in a perfect world. And, but sometimes you can't always do that. So the way you would approach it, or the way I would approach it, would just absolutely, to the best of my ability, try and be as objective as possible. The fallback that I think would be an outstanding addition as well is you're obviously going to know the list of speakers before you stand up, or before they stand up and speak. So you could get with the chief judge and say, hey, buddy, I'm sorry, but I happen to know this speaker. How would you like me to proceed? And let the chief judge help with that decision-making process. It's difficult to try and separate yourself from a speaker that you know. It's just human nature. But talk to the chief judge and bring them into the discussion and make them aware.
That's good advice. Thank you. All right. So I don't have any more questions pending because Jeff's presentation was so thorough and chock full of information that it seems like he's covered all the bases. So I'll make it a last call for any questions. Oh, hey, so Doug has a comment. Doug Kelly put in a comment. He says, don't put the onus on the chief judge. Be objected, period. And that's a good point, Doug, I think,
Yeah.
makes there. And I guess you have to ask yourself that question too, is whether your familiarity with one of the contestants will completely bias your decision or not, because I think Toastmasters gives you a pretty good opportunity to remain objective using the tools, the ballot sheet.
Sure. And I do agree with that I do agree with that there's a side of it that says you shouldn't tell the chief judge. But my concern would be that if there's anyone in the audience that happens to know that you know one of the speakers, and perhaps there's some relationship or something, that could create some, I don't know, unsavoriness, for lack of a better term.
No, absolutely, because you wouldn't want people to think that your friend won because you judged
Exactly.
and you were friendly and you rated them higher than they should have been. True, because above all, you want to be discreet, but you want to be above board. And every contest, should never have a question about the results or how they were determined. So that's a good point. It's one that I hadn't thought about before. But that obviously, if you're good friends with the speaker who's competing and people know that, then you may want to opt out of participating. And I think for the most part, a chief judge that's doing a really thorough job might vet that ahead of time as well. Oh, and Adrian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree 100%.
Oh, Doug's asking to be unmuted, so I'm gonna unleash Doug here. So Doug, you should be able to deliver your input now.
Two things. The first thing I would have done, Jeff, with this is I would have lost that word underdog. It created just too much confusion. The other part, though, is if you know a contestant, and you don't always know who the contestants are until you walk into the contest.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
You pick up the brochure, you know, it's, oh my God, that's my best friend Judy. Then what happens in a case like that is you don't get to go and run off to the chief judge. Oh, I know Judy, I can't be a judge tonight or whatever. No, what you do is you kind of hunker down and say, you know what, I've got to be really totally objective with Judy. And it's just a simple matter. Well, here's the deal. You know a person, you like a person. I have been doing judging for 40 plus years, and I can tell you that you cannot be objective. I have never been successful at being totally objective if I'm honest with myself. If I know somebody and like somebody, I'll lean 1 or 2 points in their favor no matter what, not consciously, but I just, you know, whatever it is. So know that. And don't see the other side of that coin is you get in there and it's your buddy and you didn't know they were in the contest and and you rate them harder than they should be. So that's not good either. So be as objective as you can. Forget the fact that you know them or you know how they've spoken, you know that they could have done better tonight than if they, you know, or they could have been worse tonight, or you've seen them speak and they were better or worse or whatever. Forget all that stuff. Just be as objective as you can. And Jeff hit it right on the spot when he said, you look at that and say, you know, if they're between, you know, excellent and good or very good, you know, where is that leading? Stick to the points, because when you stick to the points, that takes a bit of you out of it and allows you to go to the point system, and that will allow you to be objective. And that's all I have to say about that.
Well,
Thanks.
And Doug can never exit without saying something, of course. But the point I'm making is that I believe in a little bit of transparency. Yeah, you don't know, you may not know, you probably don't know who all the speakers are. And so you get there and you look at the program and you say, oh, Mary Smith is there. And I'm really good friends with Mary Smith. And maybe people in the audience know that I know Mary Smith. And I just think it's better if at least someone knows that a judge recognizes that particular aspect. They've self-recognized that they know somebody within the contest. That's the only reason I bring it up. Whether the chief judge disqualifies the judge or not, that's up to the chief judge as far as I'm concerned. I just believe that when you're going to be a judge and you see that list of people, in a perfect world you don't know any of them. You may have heard them speak sometime before, okay, that's fine. But you have to just look at them very objectively. But if you know somebody and you think there may be some possibility of, you know, whispers in the audience or something, then I'd at least make sure that the chief judge knows. That's all. That's the only reason, Doug.
Yep, just try to keep it above board. Well,
Yeah.
Pat had a really good question, because he mentions that in the at the club contest level, you're pretty much going to know, if you're judging within your own club, you're going to know everybody. and you know, and maybe you're not pals, but you might recognize if somebody's having a bad day or a bad night or a bad speech, right? And so we'll go back to the ballot and the judge's code of ethics, right?
Exactly. You know, we look at each speech individually, and at a club level, you're right, everybody knows each other. Now, there are some clubs, some of the larger clubs, that swap judges for even their club contest. Stone Oak Toastmasters and Business and Professional, for example, will be exchanging 5 judges each for their respective club contests. And we do that simply to help the whole scheme of things. It gives not only a practice for people, but it really does give a lot more objectivity as well. It's not that we favor one or the other within a particular club. We look at it objectively and we move on. Generally speaking, at a club level, if Mary Smith wins the club first place, she's probably going to win it regardless. That's just the way it will be at that particular level. The issue is when you get above, I think, in the area and division and district, that's where I think it becomes a little bit more critical that judges be far more objective. And we have to remember that when you tear off that bottom ballot, the chief judge and the ballot counters do not see how you scored somebody. Only you know how you scored somebody. Remember, that upper portion does not get turned into the ballot counters. As a matter of fact, they have no desire to see it. They don't want to see it. It has zero meaning to them. And so you can't use that to help justify how you came up with these. We as judges have to look at each individual as objectively as we can. That's the best we can do.
All right. Well, we've got just a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of roll into my summary here. Again, I'm going to send out Jeff's PowerPoint presentation to everybody that attended tonight. I've got all your email addresses from the Eventbrite registration site. So, and I'll also include a District 55 resource page for contest planning that it's my go-to page. I go back to that one all the time. So, so I want to say thanks to everybody who has been online tonight. Adrian has given you kudos. He really especially appreciates the advice about folding the ballot back for each speaker. And I agree, that's kind of a nice one, where you protect sort of, your notes as you go along, but you're also protecting yourself from making that cross-contestant comparison. You're right. Actually judging each person individually, which I think really is a different kind of thing, and you really only have to compare contestant versus contestant when you end up with a mathematical tie. So, correct. Yeah. So you're getting.
And in fairness, it was Doug Kelly that actually taught me that when I did my first judging. He was the one that explained that to me, and it made so much sense. Because when you're sitting in the room and there's all kinds of people around you, there's 15 pairs of beady eyes staring at you and what you're writing, and trying to be discreet is really, really tough. And so folding that page over really works to help keep the judge at ease while they're judging.
I'm going to be using that trick myself. Thank you. So I think we're good. I think we've reached the end of the time. Jeff, you and I are both getting lots of comments and compliments on the chat. So I think a job well done for both of us. I'll pat myself on the back and virtually pat you on the back as well.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the kind words and the thoughts and everything that are coming across. It was a lot of fun, and I tell you what, it really was. It was fun putting together. It was fun delivering it.
All right, so we'll say goodnight, everybody, and look for a follow-up email from me. And have a great night, and thanks again for participating in the webinar.
Take care.
Bye.